Why nothing shakes him anymore. There was once a man who had nothing, no title, no riches, no army at his back, yet even emperors came to listen when he spoke. They mocked him. He did not flinch. They struck him. He did not rage. They took everything he owned, but he still walked as if he possessed the world. Why? Because no one could touch what he had built. Not with swords, not with slander, not even with betrayal. He had carved out something sacred inside, a stillness so steady, not even fate could shake it loose. His name was Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by cruelty, but more free than the men who owned him. You see, strength does not begin with muscles or money. It begins with a vow whispered in silence. No matter what happens around me, nothing will disturb the calm within me. And that vow, if you let it, can become your shield too. This story isn't about becoming untouchable. It's about learning how to remain unshaken, even when the world shakes everything around you. So if you're tired of being pulled by every opinion, if you're weary of the noise that fills your mind when someone wrongs you, if you're ready to build a kind of peace no one can steal, then stay close, because today we walk the path of the Stoic. We walk with Epictetus. The inner fortress. Imagine for a moment, there is a place inside you where no insult can enter, no rejection can reach, no manipulation can move you. It doesn't look like much from the outside. No banners, no walls, no lock and key, but it is there, waiting, quiet, solid, and yours alone. Epictetus called it the inner citadel. The place where your true power lives, not in loud confidence, not in control over others, but in mastery of yourself. And this is not a fortress you're born with. It is built stone by stone, thought by thought, choice by quiet, stubborn choice. 12 principles, 12 keys to the kind of life no storm can break. They are not rules. They are refuges. They do not promise comfort. They promise clarity. In a world where so much is loud, fast, and false, these teachings invite you to go slow, to go deep, to become so rooted in who you are that even when the winds come, you remain. This is not the story of a man who avoided pain. It is the story of a man who met it and did not bow. And in learning his way, perhaps you'll remember your own. So take a breath. Let the world fall away for just a moment. You are safe here. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Sacred Divide. Know what's yours, and so the journey begins. Now that we've stepped inside the quiet of the inner citadel, Epictetus lays before us the very first stone, the foundation of all Stoic strength. It is not complex, but it is crucial. He calls it the dichotomy of control. It sounds simple, but it holds the weight of the world. There are only two kinds of things in this life. Things that are up to us and things that are not. That's it. No third category. No blurred lines. And here's the truth. Almost everything that disturbs your peace falls into that second pile. What others think of you. What they say behind closed doors. Whether the market crashes or the rain ruins your plans. Not yours. Never was. What belongs to you is far less, but far more powerful. Your choices. Your values. How you respond when things fall apart. What you hold sacred when no one is watching. Epictetus was born into chains, a slave in the Roman Empire, powerless in every outward sense. But he discovered something astonishing. Even if the body is bound, the mind remains free. And where the mind is free, no one can own you. He taught his students to pause before reacting, to ask one silent question. Is this mine to carry? Is this insult mine? Is this rumor mine? Is this failure even mine? If I did all I could with honesty and effort, most often the answer is no. And in that moment, you can choose to let it go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. But let's be honest, letting go is not easy. We're trained to control everything, to worry ahead, to hold tight, to fix, explain, defend. But the more we clutch at what we cannot change, the more we become slaves to it. It's like standing in a river, trying to hold back the current with your bare hands. You tire, you fall, you suffer, but when you step aside, the river passes and you remain. Peace, Epictetus taught, is not found in domination, but in discernment. To know what is yours and what is not, to leave others to their choices, their judgments, their storms, and to return to what is yours, your calm, your intention, your integrity. He once said, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is our own doing. Everything else, none of our business. Imagine that. How many of your sleepless nights were spent wrestling with things outside of your hands? How many of your fears were built from shadows you couldn't catch? What if you simply let go? There is a sacred freedom in that surrender, not a giving up, but a rising above. You stop being a puppet pulled by strings of others' approval or success or chaos. You become still, rooted like an oak in the storm. Not because the winds don't blow, but because you've planted yourself in what's truly yours. And when you do this, consistently, gently, honestly, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel light again. Not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to bear. So tonight or tomorrow, when something tries to pull you, a comment, a loss, a silence that feels too loud, pause and ask yourself with kindness, is this mine? If it is, tend to it with care. If it isn't, let it pass like wind over water. That is the first principle. That is the first gate. The moment you stop trying to control what isn't yours, you begin to master what is. And that, dear listener, is the first step to becoming unshakable. Let's walk forward. The next stone waits. Chapter 2. Respond. Don't react. And now that we've drawn the first line, between what is ours and what is not, we come to the next gate. The one that stands between impulse and intention, between the heat of reaction and the cool breath of response. Epictetus never said emotions were wrong. He never asked us to be numb or cold or lifeless. He simply asked this: before you speak, before you act, pause and choose. Because somewhere between what happens to you and what you do about it, there is a sliver of stillness. And in that stillness lives your power. You see, the world will try to provoke you. People will test your patience, disrespect your effort, ignore your kindness, and in those moments your blood may rise, your fists may clench. Your voice may want to lash out and defend the self that feels cornered, but reaction is the language of the untrained. It is how the wounded animal survives. And you, dear soul, are not an animal. You are a sovereign being. You are the keeper of your own mind. To react is to hand your power away, to say you did this and now I must follow. But to respond, that is to reclaim authorship of your life. Epictetus often reminded his students that you cannot control what people do, but you can always control how you interpret it. You can decide what story you will tell yourself, and from that story, choose what to do next. Someone insults you. You can take it as truth and burn, or you can see it as noise and stay rooted. Someone forgets you, leaves you, betrays you. You can spiral into grief and self-doubt, or you can sit with the pain and let it pass like weather without letting it alter your character. This is not repression. It is refinement. You are not avoiding your feelings. You are holding them gently. examining them, asking them what they want from you, and then you decide how to act. Epictetus once said, "When someone irritates you, realize that their behavior is not in your control, but your response is. Don't give them the satisfaction of mastering your emotions. That's the secret, isn't it? To master your response is to master your freedom. No one can make you small unless you react small. No one can drag you into their drama unless you step onto their stage. Let others throw stones. You build altars. Let others shout. You listen to the silence beneath their noise. Because what you respond to reveals who you are. And not every fire is worth your oxygen. Not every battle deserves your sword. There is a quiet strength in walking away, in answering cruelty with calm, in choosing your energy like a sacred currency and spending it only where it matters. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. So how do we practice this? You pause, you breathe, you let the first wave pass through you without grabbing hold. And then you ask, what would the calmest version of me do next? What would the wiser me say or not say right now? And then you act from there. That choice is yours, always yours, even in the storm. Even when it hurts, even when your voice shakes, you can still choose to speak with grace. That is the second stone of the inner fortress. That is what Epictetus built his life upon, and now you can too. Let's continue. The next chapter awaits. Chapter 3. Self-worth is yours alone. And so, from the stillness between stimulus and response, we step into even deeper ground. This next stone, this next lesson from Epictetus is not about the world. It's about you, what you believe you are, what you allow others to make you feel, and where you've placed the key to your worth. You see, many of us spend our lives in a quiet courtroom. We stand trial every day, measured by compliments, judged by silence, condemned by rejection. A sideways glance can rattle us. A single criticism can undo our confidence, a whisper of gossip. And suddenly we're shrinking. But Epictetus asks, who are these judges and why do you hand them the robe, the gavel, and your peace of mind? No one can harm you, he said, unless you allow it. Not with words, not with cold shoulders, not with their version of who they think you are. Because they do not know. They don't see the long nights you endured. They don't feel the weight you've carried in silence. They weren't there when you chose kindness over revenge, when you said nothing instead of striking back. You did that. And you know it, and that knowing is sacred. Epictetus believed that true self-worth is a fortress built from within. It is not decorated with praise. It is not broken by insult. It simply is, rooted in who you choose to be, not in how the world receives you. Others may misunderstand you, and they will. They may think you're cold when you're calm, weak when you're merciful, selfish when you protect your energy, but that's not your burden to carry. Epictetus warned, if someone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, or he would not have mentioned these alone. What a powerful truth, to not defend, to not explain, but to quietly keep walking, knowing who you are. And this does not mean you are without flaw. In fact, it means the opposite. It means you know your shadows. You've sat with them. You've worked with them. You've forgiven them. So when the world tries to point them out, you do not panic. You do not feel exposed. Because you've already faced them and they no longer scare you. This is the quiet dignity of self-possession. When someone mocks you and it doesn't land. When someone leaves and it doesn't hollow you. When someone doubts you and you remain sure. Because you know what they do not. Your worth was never theirs to give. And it's not theirs to take. So how do we cultivate this kind of inner solidity? We stop outsourcing our value. We stop waiting for applause before we move. We stop seeking reflection in the eyes of those who cannot see clearly. Instead, we return inward. We keep promises to ourselves. We build integrity in silence. We treat ourselves with the same respect we often reserve only for others. And slowly, stone by stone, a quiet confidence begins to grow. Not the kind that needs to be seen, but the kind that cannot be shaken. That is what Epictetus offers us here, the deep remembering that you are not what they call you. You are not what they misunderstand. You are what you stand for, what you endure, and what you rise above. Hold that close, because when the day comes, and it will, when someone tries to belittle you or make you feel small, you will smile. Not in arrogance, but in peace, because you will know they do not see you, but you do. And that is enough. Now, take that knowing with you. The next lesson waits. Chapter 4. Silence is power. And once you've remembered who you are, once your worth is no longer up for trade or validation, there comes a shift, a quiet turning inward, where the strongest part of you no longer needs to be seen. This is where Epictetus brings us next, to the hush between words, to the strength of silence. In a world that shouts, silence feels like rebellion. Everyone's trying to be louder, more visible, more validated. But Epictetus chose a different path, not because he was timid, but because he was wise. He knew that silence is not the absence of voice, it is the presence of discipline, of intention, of clarity. Let silence be your general rule, he advised, or say only what is necessary and in few words, not because words are evil, but because most are wasted. Most are driven by ego, by impulse, by the desperate need to be heard. But the Stoic knows you don't have to say everything you feel. You don't have to explain your every move. You don't have to fill every quiet space with sound. Sometimes the deepest transformation happens in silence. When you resist the urge to defend yourself, when you choose not to respond to provocation, when you let others assume and stay still anyway. Silence is not submission, it is selection. You are choosing where to place your energy. You are choosing what deserves your voice, your presence, your breath, and in doing so, you preserve your strength. Epictetus lived in a time when speech could cost you everything. A wrong word in the wrong ear could lead to torture or exile, and yet what he taught was not fear, but focus, a fierce restraint. He wanted his students to speak only when their words served purpose, to speak in service of virtue, not vanity, because when you speak less, you observe more. You hear what others miss. You sense the true currents beneath the surface. And here's the truth: few ever say aloud. Those who speak little are often the ones people listen to most. Not because they're mysterious, but because their words carry weight. They've shown they can sit in discomfort, that they don't rush to be understood, that they are not moved by the need to impress. There's something magnetic about that, and something deeply liberating, because silence also protects your becoming. It guards the soft parts of you still forming. It shields the ideas not yet ready to bloom. Not everything sacred must be shared. Not everything beautiful must be posted. Some things are meant to be held, kept warm within you until the time is right. And if that time never comes, it is still yours. And that in itself is power. So how do we practice this? We begin slowly. We resist the urge to explain when accused. We pause before answering. We speak when it adds peace, not noise. We allow silence to do the heavy lifting, and we learn to be okay with being misunderstood, because the one who needs less explaining fears less exposure. Let them wonder. Let them guess. You are not here to be fully known by everyone. You are here to walk with intention, and sometimes the most intentional thing you can do is say nothing at all. So guard your silence. Not as a wall, but as a sanctuary, not to keep others out, but to keep your soul from scattering. That is the fourth stone in your inner fortress. And perhaps the most quietly powerful one yet. Let us continue. The next chapter awaits. Chapter 5. Let them misjudge you. And now that we've sat in silence, now that we've learned to protect our truth with quiet, Epictetus leads us to a deeper kind of courage, one that asks us to let go of something most people spend their entire lives chasing: approval. This is the next stone. Let them misjudge you. Let them get it wrong. Let them think what they think. Because here's the quiet truth you must one day accept if you wish to live free. You will be misunderstood. No matter how kind you are, no matter how true, no matter how soft your words or clean your hands, they will think you meant something you didn't. They will question your motives. They will say you've changed when all you've done is grow. Epictetus saw this not as a tragedy, but as a test, not of your worth, but of your grounding. If you want to improve, he said, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, not because you are, but because the world does not always recognize what it cannot define, and people fear what they do not understand. So what will you do when that day comes? When someone takes your silence as weakness, when they twist your boundaries into selfishness, when your absence is labeled as cold, your confidence as arrogance, will you panic? Will you run back to explain? Will you shrink yourself just to be better received, or will you stay still in your knowing? Still in your heart, still in the truth you do not need to prove. This is not about pride. It's about peace, because the moment you accept that not everyone will see you clearly is the moment you stop needing them to. You stop arguing with shadows. You stop watering gardens that refuse to grow. You stop exhausting yourself trying to convince the world of your goodness. You begin to live. And in that space, where misjudgment is allowed to pass through you like wind, you will find something rare. You will find a self no longer tethered to perception. Epictetus knew this. He lived it. As a crippled ex-slave turned teacher, he was no stranger to ridicule. Many dismissed him. Many doubted him. Many never understood how someone with no status, no title, no gold could be so calm, so content, so inwardly free. But Epictetus did not explain himself. He lived his philosophy. He let the results speak in whispers louder than any defense, and we are called to do the same. So how do we practice this strength of spirit? We start with a soft truth. I do not need to be understood to be whole. Say it. Let it sink in. Let it become the cloak you wear when the world begins to ask too many questions. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them build their version of you out of scraps and guesses. You have no duty to fix their lens, only to keep yours clean. And every time you allow a false judgment to pass without grabbing it, you become lighter, you become braver, you become free. Because those who fear being misjudged will always belong to others, but those who release that fear finally belong to themselves. That is the fifth stone. Weathered by misunderstanding, polished by patience, set deep into the walls of your unshakable self. And now we move forward. The path calls again. Chapter 6. Say no without explaining. From the echoes of misunderstanding, we now come to one of the most difficult acts of strength a soul can learn. The quiet power of saying no, not in anger, not with guilt, but with calm, steady self-respect. This is the sixth stone in your inner citadel, the right to decline without needing to justify. To protect your time, to guard your energy, to honor your peace without turning every decision into a courtroom. Epictetus understood boundaries long before the word became popular, but for him it wasn't about walls, it was about wisdom. He taught that our lives are shaped by what we say yes to and what we dare to say no to. And more often than not, the suffering comes from our inability to choose the latter. You know this. You've felt the tension rise when someone asks for more than you have to give. You've nodded when your spirit whispered no. You've agreed out of fear of seeming rude, selfish, difficult, disappointing. But here's the truth. Epictetus would ask you to consider, every yes spoken out of fear is a no to yourself. You are not selfish for needing space. You are not cold for choosing rest. You are not unkind for declining what drains you. You are simply awake, aware, free. In fact, one of the greatest forms of freedom, Epictetus said, is the ability to act according to your values, not the expectations of others, to not explain every move, to not justify every boundary, to not negotiate your well-being for temporary approval. Imagine how different your life would feel if you allowed yourself to say, no thank you, without a paragraph, without a nervous laugh, without a fabricated excuse, just no, with grace, with finality, and with love for yourself and for the clarity that sustains you. This is the deeper meaning of discipline. Not punishment, not harshness, but the gentle, consistent act of living in alignment with what matters most. You don't owe anyone a reason for choosing what heals you. You don't need a long explanation to choose differently than others expect. Let your no be sacred. Let your boundaries be quiet, acts of devotion to your deepest self. There is wisdom in knowing what belongs inside your gate and what does not. Some things must be kept outside. Toxic conversations, draining obligations, expectations dressed as kindness but hiding control. And how do you know the difference? You listen to that quiet part of you that tenses when something feels off, to the way your body stiffens around certain people, to the sigh you exhale when you imagine backing out, but don't. Epictetus didn't beg his students to live loud. He asked them to live true. And sometimes, the truest life is the one that turns away from the noise, from the crowd, from the constant pull to be all things to all people. You are allowed to choose, and you are allowed to walk away. So, when the next request comes, the next hand reaching toward your time, your heart, your presence, pause. Ask yourself, is this aligned with the peace I'm building? And if the answer is no, then let your voice follow. Not with shame, not with fear, but with quiet strength. That is the sixth stone. The gate of sacred refusal, the vow to protect the flame inside you, even if it means disappointing someone outside of you. You are not here to please the world. You are here to live with clarity, and clarity, dear soul, often sounds like a gentle, unwavering no. Let us walk on. The next truth awaits. Chapter 7. Own less, be owned by no one. As we step beyond the firm boundaries of refusal, we now enter a quieter, subtler space. A space where freedom isn't taken, but surrendered. Where peace is not found by adding more, but by letting go. This is the seventh stone in the Stoic fortress. Own less and be owned by no one. It sounds simple, but it shakes the very foundation of modern life. We are told every day by screens, by voices, by the very air we breathe, that we need more things. More success, more comfort, more recognition. But Epictetus saw clearly what most people never do. The more you cling to what is external, the more control you surrender. He owned very little. By choice, he lived humbly, wore simple clothes, ate simple food. He had no title, no palace, no power in the worldly sense, and yet no man could command him, no ruler could silence him. No threat could move him, because you cannot threaten a man who has nothing to lose. You cannot manipulate a soul who does not crave what you dangle. This is not about becoming a monk or abandoning the world. It's about understanding how desire makes us vulnerable. When you must have something, status, money, luxury, applause, you give the world the leash. They pull it, and you follow. Not because you want to, but because you need to. And the one who needs too much becomes a servant, not of people, but of fear. Fear of loss, fear of missing out, fear of being seen as less than. But when you simplify, when you begin to separate who you are from what you own, you begin to feel a new kind of lightness. Not just physical, but spiritual. You stop chasing, you stop clinging. You stop being seduced by every shiny promise of more, and what's left is space, stillness, strength. Epictetus would ask his students, if something were taken from you, your home, your work, your comforts, would you remain the same? If the answer is no, then perhaps you do not possess that thing. It possesses you. To be truly free is to live in a way where nothing external defines your worth or dictates your behavior, where you can lose what you have and still remain whole. This isn't detachment from joy. It's the deep wisdom of holding loosely, loving things but not needing them to breathe, appreciating comfort but not collapsing when it's gone. So how do we practice this kind of freedom? We begin by noticing what we grasp too tightly. We ask ourselves, do I own this or does it own me? That car you fear getting scratched, that job you fear losing, that image you fear cracking. You do not have to throw it all away. But you must loosen your grip. You must learn to say, this adds value to my life, but it does not define it. And slowly, day by day, your identity returns to its rightful place, inside, where no thief can enter, where no loss can reach. Epictetus did not just teach this. He lived it, and the freedom it gave him echoed louder than gold or status ever could, because the man who needs nothing has everything. This is the seventh stone, light as air, strong as steel. The choice to simplify so no one can buy, borrow, or break your peace. Let go of what you don't need. Make room for what cannot be stolen. Now the next step awaits. Come, let us walk lighter. Chapter 8. Walk alone when needed. And now that you've begun to release what weighs you down, to loosen your grip on the things that once defined you, there comes a moment on this path, quiet and often unspoken, when you must walk a little while, alone. This is the eighth stone in the Stoic path, the courage to walk alone when the soul calls you inward. It is not the kind of loneliness that comes from being forgotten. It is the kind that comes from being called deeper, into yourself, into your truth, into a space that cannot be shared, only honored. Epictetus knew this path well. He was not born into the company of friends. He was born into slavery, into silence, into solitude. But it was there, in the shadows of isolation, that something holy began to take shape in him. He learned to sit with his own mind, to befriend his own thoughts, to listen, not to the world's noise, but to the voice within that cannot be drowned. He taught that if you fear being alone, you haven't yet made peace with yourself. Because when your own company feels like punishment, what you're truly avoiding is the reflection in the stillness. and stillness reveals all. The Stoic does not seek isolation out of pride, but out of purpose. Sometimes you must step away from the opinions, the noise, the constant pull of others' expectations, just to hear yourself think again, to feel your breath, to ask hard questions without echo. Who am I when no one is looking? What do I stand for when no one is clapping? What kind of person do I become in the quiet? These are not small questions. They are the foundation of all strength, because the truth is most people never get to know themselves. They're always surrounded, always distracted, always absorbed in the eyes of others. But the Stoic, he turns inward, not because he despises the world, but because he wants to enter it whole. You cannot be led if you are always leaning. You cannot be free if you are always followed. Solitude teaches you to stand, and it's in that standing, unapplauded, unrecognized, unwatched, that the soul forges steel. This is not to say life should be lived alone. No, we are made for connection, for brotherhood, for love. But before you share yourself with the world, you must know what you carry. You must know what you believe. You must know that even if the room empties, even if the crowd fades, you remain. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And sometimes that includes the presence of others, their opinions, their applause, even their understanding. When you can walk a season alone and not collapse, you prove to yourself that you are enough. And from that knowing, you can love better, lead wiser, and live freer. So do not fear the quiet stretches. Do not panic when no one claps. Do not fill every moment with noise. Some paths are meant to be walked with only your shadow. Some clarity only arrives when no one is watching. That is the eighth stone, still and solemn, a place to rest, a place to listen, a place to remember that you were never meant to be kept company at the cost of your soul. Let the silence be your companion for now, and when you're ready, we'll take the next step together. Chapter 9. You don't owe the world an explanation. And once you've learned to walk alone, once you've sat quietly with your own soul and made peace with what you found there, you'll notice something shifts. Suddenly, the urge to prove, to justify, to explain yourself to others begins to fade. This is the ninth stone in your Stoic fortress. You do not owe the world an explanation for being who you are. It sounds bold, perhaps even selfish, but it's not. It's a return to dignity, to the ancient right of living honestly, without constant apology. Epictetus understood this burden, the endless need to explain your choices, your beliefs, your silence, to soften your truth just enough to be accepted, to bend your spine so others feel taller. But he rejected that game. He walked with a calm defiance, a man not loud but clear, not defensive but certain. He knew that the moment you feel obligated to explain yourself to every voice that questions you, you are no longer living for your own truth. You're living to satisfy someone else's misunderstanding. And that, dear listener, is a life half lived. You see, not everyone will understand your pace. Not everyone will approve of your boundaries. Not everyone will agree with how you choose to spend your energy. Some will call you cold for not engaging in drama. Some will call you arrogant for not defending your name. Some will call you strange for walking a path that isn't paved by popularity. Let them. You are not here to explain your soul to those committed to misreading it. The oak does not explain itself to the blade of wind. It simply stands, rooted, silent, whole. This is not about rudeness, it's about restraint. The Stoic does not lash out. He does not argue with noise. He does not plead for understanding where it's not freely given. Instead, he returns to himself. He does the inner work, he chooses what aligns, and he walks on. Epictetus taught his students to value the opinion of their own conscience above the noise of the crowd, because that's what it is, just noise, and noise is never satisfied. You will explain once, and they'll want more. You will defend today, and tomorrow they'll ask again. But silence makes room for integrity, for peace, for clarity that doesn't need an audience. You're not rude for choosing quiet over argument. You're not cold for withholding your story from someone who only wants to pick it apart. You are simply wise enough to know that some truths grow stronger in stillness. And some things, perhaps the most sacred things, do not need to be spoken at all. So the next time someone demands an answer, why you pulled away, why you didn't react, why you're choosing this quiet life, breathe. And if your spirit says nothing, then say nothing. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You do not owe the world a neatly packaged version of your healing. You do not have to unwrap your journey for anyone who hasn't earned your trust. Let your life be the answer. Let your peace speak where words cannot. That is the 9th stone, polished in silence, rooted in self-trust. Unshakable by expectation. Now take a moment, stand in that quiet. And when you're ready, we'll take the next step together. Chapter 10. Keep some things sacred. And now, after walking quietly past judgment, after standing firm in your silence, after releasing the need to explain, you reach a softer, older wisdom. One that doesn't shout or preach. One that lives in the hush of your chest, in the closed pages of your soul. This is the 10th stone in the Stoic path. Keep some things sacred, not hidden out of fear, but protected out of reverence. There is a kind of strength, Epictetus taught, that comes not from exposure, but from privacy, from what you choose to withhold, not because it's shameful, but because it's holy. We live in a time that tempts us to share everything. Our thoughts, our pain, our plans. To document our healing, to explain our growth, to seek validation for every inch we climb. But not everything must be spoken. Not every wound needs display. Not every dream is ready for the open air. Some things are still blooming, some truths are still ripening, and if you bring them into the harsh light too soon, they shrivel. Epictetus would have smiled at the modern obsession with expression. He would have reminded us that the deepest roots grow underground, that what is unseen often holds the most strength. He lived this. He did not write volumes about his own greatness. He did not parade his philosophy for applause. He lived it quietly, day by day, moment by moment, letting his life, not his lips, be the teaching. And what about you? What parts of you have you shared too quickly, hoping they'd be cherished, only to watch them be questioned or dismissed? What pieces of your becoming have you given away before they had a chance to take full shape inside you? This is your reminder. It is not weakness to hold things close. It is wisdom. Keep your sacred mornings. Keep your private intentions. Keep your quiet prayers, whatever form they take. You do not need to show your growth to prove it's real. You do not need to unwrap your soul for strangers to believe it shines. Let your sacred things remain untouched by opinion. Let them grow in silence until they're too strong to be broken, and then perhaps you'll choose to share, or perhaps not. And that's the beauty. You get to decide. There is great power in restraint. Not the kind that represses, but the kind that respects. The kind that says, this belongs to me. This moment, this vision, this soft corner of my soul. It's not for public use. Even among those you love, you are allowed to have a room that is yours alone. a space no one enters, a quiet inner chamber where your spirit can rest untouched. Not every silence is emptiness. Some are altars, so protect your altars, tend to them in quiet. Let the flames burn steady in the dark, whether or not anyone sees the light from the outside. This is the 10th stone, sacred. Unspoken, proof that not all power needs an audience. And when you carry your sacred things well, with care, with respect, with fierce gentleness, you walk differently. Not louder, but deeper. And that difference is everything. Let's keep going. Only a few more steps now. Chapter 11. Transform pain into peace. And so, from the quiet of sacred things, we now arrive at the edge of something harder, the place where your peace is truly tested. Because no matter how still your spirit, life will come with its sharp corners, its sudden goodbyes, its aching losses. This is the 11th stone in the fortress. Transform pain into peace, not by avoiding it, but by walking through it differently. Epictetus never promised a life without suffering. He did not teach comfort. He taught clarity. And in that clarity, he left a message. You will hurt, but you do not have to be broken. Pain, he said, is inevitable. But suffering, ongoing torment, is something we create when we resist what we cannot change. It's like holding on to fire. The tighter we grasp the thing that burned us, the longer we stay scorched. And yet most of us do. We replay what they said. We relive what we lost. We reopen the wound again and again, hoping this time it will finally make sense. But Epictetus would whisper, "Is it happening now? Or is it your memory that tortures you?" Because here's what he believed. What happened was real. But your response to it, that is where your freedom begins. You see, pain is not your enemy. It's a teacher. But only if you stop wrestling it like a curse and begin listening to it like a messenger. What has pain come to reveal? What illusion is it trying to burn away? What have you outgrown? What did you expect to last forever that never truly belonged to you? Epictetus himself lived with physical pain every day. His body was crippled. Some say his master twisted his leg until it snapped, and when Epictetus calmly said, "You will break it," it broke. And still, he did not rage. He did not weep. He said only, "I told you so," because he knew what was broken could not touch what remained whole inside. That is the kind of power you are capable of. Not the kind that stops bad things from happening, but the kind that welcomes them as part of the human path and lets them shape you, not shatter you. So when grief visits, greet it. When anger rises, feel it. When loss empties you, sit in the hollow, but do not build your home there. Do not let that pain become your name. Instead, ask it, "What are you trying to teach me? And how do I walk forward carrying only the wisdom, not the weight?" This is how peace is forged. Not from comfort, but from courage. Courage to live with an open heart even after it's been bruised. Courage to begin again even after something has ended. Courage to bless the thing that hurt you, not because it was good, but because you are strong enough to make something good out of it. That's the alchemy of the Stoic soul. To turn life's sharp edges into soft lanterns, to let your scars become symbols of survival, of grace, of wisdom gained through fire. This is the 11th stone. Warmed by sorrow, shaped by storms, and yet unmoved. You have felt pain. Now let it become part of your strength. Breathe here for a while. Then come with me. There is one more step. Chapter 12. Walk with purpose, not noise. And now, dear soul, after facing your pain with courage, after turning grief into gold and silence into strength, you come to the 12th and final stone. The last gate, not the end, but the beginning of a life lived with quiet fire. This is the final Stoic principle. Walk with purpose, not noise. Let your life make the sound, your lips need not. So many people today chase loudness, loud opinions, loud success, loud validation. They believe that the more visible they are, the more powerful they become. But Epictetus taught the opposite. He knew that true power rarely announces itself. It does not beg to be seen. It simply is, steady, clear, directed. A lion does not roar at every bird. A river does not shout while it carves stone. A wise person does not need to prove they are wise. They walk with purpose. And that purpose creates a quiet gravity all its own. You see, purpose doesn't live in volume. It lives in alignment. In knowing what matters and letting that shape your steps. In no longer rushing to show the world you're important, but becoming someone whose presence simply is. Centered, intentional, rooted. Epictetus never tried to impress. He didn't argue in the streets. He didn't correct fools. He lived in such a way that his actions spoke what his mouth did not. He reminded his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And that is your invitation now. Let your kindness be felt, not posted. Let your decisions be shaped by your values, not by applause. Let your focus become so sharp that distraction fears you. Walk not to be seen, but because your steps are guided by something deeper than recognition. Because you carry something the world didn't give you, and therefore cannot take away. Purpose makes you unshakable. It removes the need to react to every distraction, to chase every opportunity, to please every voice. When you walk with purpose, you don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need to explain why your road looks different. You just walk, not faster, not louder. Just forward, and even if no one claps, you keep moving, because your peace is not up for vote. And what is this purpose? It's not always a career or a mission written in stone. Often it's simpler to live with integrity, to treat others with quiet respect, to protect your soul, to speak only when it adds value, to leave each place better than you found it. Purpose isn't a trophy, it's a direction, and you choose it daily. One small action at a time. One calm decision in the midst of chaos, one refusal to stoop to noise. This is the 12th stone, not grand, not loud, but firm, carved with intention. Weathered by time, set in the center of your path, let your life become the message. Let the way you move through the world be your quiet declaration, and when you do, when your walk becomes steady, silent, and sure, you will find that nothing outside of you can shake what lives within. So now you've walked the path. 12 stones, 12 truths, each one placed gently with love and strength. And this last one, it's yours to carry forward. Walk wisely. Walk softly, but above all, walk with purpose. The fortress within you. So now you've seen it. Stone by stone, choice by quiet choice. You've walked through the 12 Stoic principles that guarded Epictetus from the chaos of the world and can now protect you too, not by making life easy, not by keeping trouble away, but by anchoring you so deeply within yourself that nothing external can disturb your inner peace. You've learned to pause before reacting, to protect your energy, to say no with clarity and walk alone when needed, to speak less but mean more, to hold some things sacred, to transform pain not into bitterness but into wisdom, and finally, to move with purpose, not noise. This is how you become unshakable, not by building walls but by building depth. And now, dear listener, the choice is yours. Not just to understand these truths, but to live them, to practice them, to return to them, especially when life grows loud again, because the fortress you seek, it's not somewhere far away. It's already within you, waiting. Quiet, strong. If this journey stirred something in you, a quiet strength, a deeper calm, a sense that you are more in control than you've been led to believe, then I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy so that you never walk this path alone. There are more stories to tell, more lessons to uncover, more quiet revolutions waiting in the ancient words of men like Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and beyond. So take a breath. Let this moment settle into your soul. And remember, no man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. Thank you for listening. Thank you for becoming. Now walk forward with peace in your chest and a fortress beneath your feet.